this video, you're going to see how to section up a piece of interior film to wrap the door frame and the door. Very important to get this right because oftentimes the interior film is only about 120 centimeters wide or about 48 inches. So you don't want to use multiple pieces if you can get it all out of one piece. So here, Stefano is coming in and measuring it from top to bottom. Then he cuts the material off the roll, very easy and straightforward. Just want to make sure you have enough top to bottom and give a little extra, so like around 4 maybe 5 inches. So I would say around 15 centimeters. Then once you have everything set, now here he's cutting off the top piece now. So this is for the top of the frame. So basically cutting away, I would say about 6 inches now, and I'm going to roll this up and set it aside. So you can see he has enough that just covers the top of the frame that can go inside. So you always want to cut the top of the frame first, then you cut out the sides and the door. So that's very important to get that sequential order correct. So here it just kind of takes the panel and just rolls it straight up. Now keep in mind that with a lot of interior film, it's directional. So you want to make sure that this actually matches the top piece that got cut off. So you want to just cut off the top piece and make sure that section that got cut off doesn't go to the bottom. Now here, very important, again, depends on the type of finish, but you want to make sure that the edge of the panel just comes to the edge of the door, and then take a dry erase marker and then give yourself a little extra on the side. So basically about 1 inch or about 3 or 4 centimeters. So basically make it flush to one side of the door, mark it on the other side. And now here, what's nice about interior film is it's nice and stiff. So basically take the roll and basically as this piece is getting cut off, make sure the smaller one is kind of keeping close to the body, but then the bigger piece that's being sectioned can kind of just go across the floor. So don't need a big table for this. Just make sure that that top piece just goes nice and straightforward, doesn't crinkle too much, and then just cut it all the way across. So you can see a nice, good, straightforward cut there. This big piece can be placed aside. Now this piece, if you cut it correctly, there should be enough left for the frames itself. So you can see here, he comes back, basically takes the marker and is going to mark the middle point now. So basically you can safely cut this piece here, basically right at the middle of the, and that's what's nice about the liner right now is it has those squares. Very easy to reference, and then coming back to the ground again. So oftentimes when you're doing interior films, let's say you're in a hotel, you just don't have the option to kind of grab a big table. So you can, if you have a nice, good, clean floor area, you can section this stuff up. And as I mentioned earlier, interior film is very durable. So for the most part, straightforward. You're not going to damage material. It's not color change material or chrome. But once you have everything sectioned out now, you got the piece for the top, you got the piece for the sides, and you got the piece for the door. So this is part 1 of a 3-part series on how to wrap the frames of door and a door. And it all begins with super sharp prep. Let's get to part 1 and 2. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate. In part 2 of this 3-part series on how to wrap a door, including the frame, we're going to focus on wrapping the door. So here right now, taking a backing paper cutter, and it's always a good idea to start roughly at the top of the door and work down. You don't want to kind of pull the liner or expose the liner too much because generally the adhesive on interior films is quite aggressive. So here, very important to make a double cut with the backing paper cutter. Make it roughly, I would say, 1.5 inches wide or about maybe 3 or 4 centimeters wide. Keep that on as long as possible until you get to the door itself. Obviously make sure the door is clean. This is a technique where if you're taking the piece from the outside and then wrapping on the inside portion of the door where the door handle is, always a good idea to add masking tape. In this case, he's just wrapping to the front of the door. Now he comes in with the panel. You can see he's already exposed the adhesive by pulling away the liner right there. This has a wood grain. You want to make sure it's nice and vertical so it's not crooked. So just take your time. Make sure everything lines up. I think for an installer, it's always a good idea. Just make sure you have enough top to bottom, left to right. The knee is always really good for securing it to the door to make sure it's got good alignment. And the biggest thing right now is be sure there's not too much material on the hinge side of the door. Basically, there has to be about a 1/2 inch on the hinge side of the door, and there can be a little more on this side of the door where you're at. But on this side, very, very, very important just to have a little bit. So there's no need to masking tape the hinge if you do. Because oftentimes installers have, let's say, 2 or 3 inches on the side, and because of the aggressive adhesive, those can grab the hinges. So the sweet spot is just having enough material on the right. It doesn't matter so much on the left. And here, just squeegeeing it right onto that top section now, and now pulling the liner down straight forward. So again, you got that hinge on the right. So very important now just to kind of squeegee back and forth, but you can see that perfect amount of material right by the hinge allows just the nice, good, solid workflow left to right. And notice the backing paper is still on, but it's starting to bunch up near the bottom. So very important right now is to not just whip off that backing paper, because a lot of dirt builds up on the floor. Very important right now just to kind of make sure there's enough at the bottom and cutting the excess film away. And very important just to kind of make sure that you save it in case something needs to be patched later, especially if you're on location. So never just throw that excess piece away. But here, rolling the material up with the liner on and just creating a nice good flow right now. Don't take it all the way off because it's an extra set of hands, plus it's protecting dirt from jumping onto the adhesive right now, and is keeping the workspace nice and clean. So very important just to kind of keep it nice and rolled, and just at the very last minute, take it away and done. So you can see really good setup in terms of the panel, top to bottom, left to right. And now we're going to get into working around the hinge. I really want you to pay attention here. Very important, a lot of installers will cut at the top and the bottom of the hinge. That means the material slightly cuts short. So a good tip right now is to cut just above where the bottom of the hinge goes. And this means the material relaxes just under right now. So he's cutting about just where that kind of natural break is between the top of the hinge and then the middle piece there. Makes the cut, tucks it behind, and here's a nice slow motion shot of it right now. Not cutting on the top of the piece, but that natural break right there. And that gets about that 1/8 of an inch, or about, I would say, almost a ½ centimeter material. That once he makes that cut, see how it tucks in nice and clean around the top of the hinge. So full coverage if you cut at the right spot. If you cut too high or too low, obviously you're going to come short. So a nice good relief cut around there. And then here, this is just a straightforward tuck and cut to the base of the hinge right there. So it's just top to bottom, everything clean. So very systematic and straightforward. No need to put masking tape. Really nice, good time saver right there. So again, good tuck and cut right to the inside portion for full coverage. Once everything's done, now coming back in for the top section and running a finger top to bottom, left to right, to make sure everything's 100% set up. Now here's a very good tip as well. Oftentimes installers will try to cut straight to the edge of the door immediately, but because this is a natural gap and the material is bridging, the chance of getting an uneven cut is very high. So now say you cut on the opposite side. By cutting on the opposite side, it gives about a 1/4 inch or about 1 full centimeter of extra material. But by cutting, and this means that the material can then relax to the edge. So he cuts on the outside once, then comes back in and cuts flush to the door. So it's a 2-step process, but one that really ensures quality. So it doesn't take up too much time, but it does ensure quality, and that's definitely in the name of the game. So very important to get that as part of your protocol. Cutting on the opposite side, cutting flush to the door. And speaking of cutting to the door, notice that the blade of the angle is slightly in. Very important on doors because you're wrapping with interior film, which is generally very thick, around 8 mil, that if you cut straight, like at a 90-degree angle, the chance of it kind of being picked up is very high. So if you angle your blade in, it kind of creates that beveled cut, then you're good to go. But notice that when you do angle your blade in, the chance of the blade cutting the other side is very high. So make sure your blade is super, super shallow, but that means you also have good high focus. But if you have good high focus, you can get that good quality cutout and you get that nice good precision. And once the top is done, again, running a finger to make sure the material's formed around. You can see a super shallow blade right now, cutting from top to bottom. Very focused cut, and then once he's good, very sharp blade, very important for that, is that once that cuts at the bottom, slows down so he doesn't cut the floor, then he can just pull that excess film away. So notice the very good focus, pulling nice and even, in case so the material doesn't jump. Once that's done, cut the bottom. Now a good tip for the bottom right now is because this is exposed off to carpets, even by angling in once, it's good, it looks great, but the problem is it might pick up an edge, and that picks up fiber. So very important to double cut the bottom. So this is a double cut flush cut, and once you do the double cut flush cut here, you get that long-term durability and you're good to go. So once the bottom is nice and tight, very important to double check that there's no lifting. We now get to the final check over and cutting out the door handle. So once all that is cut out, then we can move on to the door frame, which is part 3 of this series. So I hope you picked up a lot of great tips and tricks on how to wrap a door fast and straightforward with high quality. Thanks for watching. Justin Payton. In this video, you're going to see a lot of great tips and tricks on how to wrap a door frame. And if you follow this procedure, you can really get super high quality and low install times, which is definitely the name of the game. So here, obviously, the door is opened up. Everything's been cleaned and prepped. Maybe need a primer. And now coming in with this piece right now, make sure all these lines are vertical. Make sure you have enough material left to right, and then simply just squeegee it on. So in this case, you can definitely go full cowboy. Lock it on once everything's long, nice and tight. Very important to angle the blade in here on this first cut. So notice his blade is severely angled in. This will come in very handy later. So you see here on this cut, angled in the blade in towards the edge. So basically what that's going to do is give a little extra material that folds to the inside. Runs his finger. Again, interior film is definitely thick, multi-layered, so you really want to make sure it forms on the edge, super conformed. Then once that corner is down nice and tight, coming back out with a squeegee and then forming it in all the way to the edge. So very important to round the corner. But remember earlier I talked about that angled in cut. So when the material goes inside here, it actually kind of goes onto the side frames by about 1/8 of an inch. So that's a very good thing, because once the sides go on, they're going to be cut flush at a 90-degree angle, which you'll see in a little bit. You can see that 1/8 of an inch wraparound on the vertical sections there. And then once the excess is cut away from the bottom section, this middle area is tucked in with the hard side of the squeegee. And now here for this top section here, don't need to wrap around the top of the door frame because no one's going to see it. So very important to just angle in and cut flush at the top. That'll save a huge amount of time. Once the top is cut flush, then coming back in and cutting right here just past the natural break between the horizontal at the top and the verticals. There's a 45-degree angle here. And notice though, they're just going to cut about 1/8 of an inch past the natural break there. So this is going to kind of go past the break. So you can see that the squeegee right now is cutting about 1/8 of an inch low. So it's not 100% symmetrical here, and you'll see why in a second. Then here, just trimming off the upper corner. So don't wrap around the top and then cut on just past the other side of the natural break. Now here, coming in with the vertical piece now, making sure there's enough material to wrap around the side and inside. Squeegees it down, very straightforward. And now we get into that cut that I talked about earlier. So here, instead of angling his blade away, he's coming in at a 90-degree angle, which means that once he makes this cut to the corner, he's going to round the corner here, so it's nice and firm, but now this goes flush into the corner. So the top section overlapped the corner by about 1/8 of an inch to the other side, and this goes right into the corner, which means no cutting, which is a huge time saver. So if you don't have to cut in this corner and have it look super tight, that's definitely the best call. And now here, just tucking it right into the farthest part of the frame, cut everything out, and then coming back in and sealing the deal. So again, really smart to get your good angles in that corner there, then you don't have to finish it off. Here, rounding the outside portion now, then coming back with the hard side of the squeegee, making sure everything goes down nice and tight. This is definitely a tuck and cut, we'll come back to later. But now here, notice that the squeegee is right from corner to corner. So basically he's cutting right along the natural break between the top piece and those verticals right now. And this will basically look really symmetrical once everything's cut out. But because the first piece overlapped the gap by about 1/8 of an inch, and here he barely cut deep enough where you get that nice good straight line, it's super symmetrical. So very good tip for that. So hopefully you definitely can incorporate that in your skill game. And then here, just basically a straight tuck and cut on the edge, and here's a shot of the final result. Super high quality, awesome door frame, very little cutting on the really critical parts. And it's all about just having really good logic and going into it and following that protocol. And once you get this down, you get really good fast door frames along with the door. Hope you enjoyed this series. Thanks for watching, and thank you to CoverStyle for showing these tips and tricks.